everyone. So this video today is about procrastination, and that's something that's been coming up obviously, especially because of our current time, but I think procrastination is something that is relevant probably all of the time. And procrastination is important to understand in order for us to be able to combat it. I always say a problem that we can't talk about is one that we can't do anything about. So let's get into it. So procrastination is really deeply tied to perfectionism. And a perfectionist streak is often coming usually from a place of trauma. So if you've grown up in high stress situations or maybe abusive situations that have made you feel as though in order for you to get the love or the safety or the protection that you deserve, you have to be as perfect as possible. Maybe you've also developed this as a way to cope with anticipating abuse or anticipating people getting mad or yelling at you for things. So you aim to be as perfect as possible and try to exercise an enormous amount of control over your life. Sound familiar? The thing about this is that perfectionism and procrastination are really tied very closely together. So procrastination is often performance anxiety for people who are highly perfectionist. So if you have this incredible desire to want to do everything as perfect as possible, then you will procrastinate often to the point that you won't do anything at all, because you'd rather not do it at all than risk not doing it perfectly. So this is a challenge. Again, a lot of these issues maybe seem really surface because they're tied to these ideas of productivity. So productivity tells us that we're only valuable when we're producing something or making something. And this is often related to our jobs or our careers. And in our jobs and our careers, most of our bosses are not necessarily interested in our general health or well-being or any sort of historical trauma that we might have that may prevent us from being most effective and efficient at our job. And usually because the pressure at workplaces is often so high, or because of a broader sense of accountability that comes from working with a team of people, we may not experience that level of procrastination when we're working at jobs. However, now that we're working at home and we're also, obviously collectively traumatized, collectively experiencing grief as a result of the pandemic, this may make it even more difficult to process those feelings and may make our procrastination, I don't even want to say worse, because procrastination is part of a strategy that we use to protect ourselves. And a lot of people say this, but the things that we use to protect ourselves, the things that we use to survive, are not the same tools that are going to help us thrive. So I don't want to speak negatively necessarily about procrastination, because I think that it also speaks to a human desire to want rest and want freedom of time. The whole point of the Industrial Revolution was not to have us working 60, 70 hours a week. The whole point was that over time, human beings would work less and less because of the kind of technological advances that we were experiencing. But despite all of those technological advancements, we haven't actually seen our experience of life and greater breaks grow in any capacity. So despite this acceleration of life, industrialization, all of the different kinds of improvements that we have seen, this hasn't translated into most workers getting more and more free time. So part of procrastination is our human desire to fight against a life that looks like working all the time. And that's normal. It's normal not to want to work for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. And at the same time, that also is coupled with a need to survive in a world that is built on, a financial economy. I also wanted to say that first because I want people to feel less guilt about it, right? And I want you to feel less shame about it as an experience, because again, that's part of a culture that is really imbalanced in terms of this emphasis over work at our jobs versus work in our life, or time with our family or friends or our dogs or our cats, or even just time for ourselves. And having a natural and healthy balance between the two of those things is part of what our body will normally strive for. So procrastination can also be a response to that, a response to overworking yourself. And you've recognized that you haven't worked necessarily a lot in the last little bit, but you may have been working your whole life. I know I have had a job since I was 10 years old. I have worked pretty consistently my whole life. And absolutely, I go into periods where I really don't want to do a lot of work. This is part of understanding that balance does not look like this. it looks more like this. Just like the economic market, there are natural highs and there are natural lows. These cannot continue to increase without any sort of limitations. Nothing functions in that way. So again, part of understanding our procrastination is also having compassion for ourselves. And also tying it back to what I was saying before, it also has a lot to do with us researching and understanding what's happened in our childhood, what our responses to high stress situations are, and how we've seen other people cope with it, or what our internalized coping mechanisms have been in high stress situations. So here are some of the things I use in a day to help me deal with my own procrastination. The first thing is never begin a day without a plan. I know this for a fact that if I don't the night before plan out very clearly what my day is going to look like tomorrow, the day is going to just completely take control of me. So if I don't make a plan for my day will make the plan for me. And if you're trying to avoid procrastination, that is maybe the most important part. So for me, and I'll share some of the way that I do it, but for me, what I do is I map out each day by the hour and have little hour blocks, and sometimes I'll break those up into 30 minutes, but I also want to recognize and give myself space for other things to happen or other things to come up, especially when you're parenting. You really can't plan things too tightly because there has to be an open, flexible space for life to happen in them. So I'll plan things out down to the hour, and instead of just assigning for me a complete to-do list, I assign individual items to all of those hours. Now, whether this is the way that you decide to do it or you have another way that you would like to do it, definitely the first thing that you really have to do is make sure that you have a clear plan for each day when you want to avoid procrastination. And again, in the same way that you don't always want to hyper-organize your days and hyper-organize your lives, make sure that you plan a day in a week that isn't a scheduled day, that is as free as possible and allows you to move really intuitively with what your body or what your mind is asking you to do without having to revert to a to-do list, at least if possible. Number 2, plan in and take breaks. Now, these breaks can be filled with you doing yoga, they can be filled with you having a dance party, they can be filled with you deciding that you're gonna give yourself 30 minutes to just, scroll through your Instagram timeline, to be on Twitter, whatever it is that you like to do to relax, or whatever you like to do in order to pass the time, or maybe your favorite procrastination process. But actually plan for those things. I find that the most efficient amount of work I can get done is really in maybe a 90-minute or 2-hour span, and then I have to take a break, or else I'm really not gonna actually be very productive. So acknowledging that you need a break, planning for them, and not just planning one big break in the middle of the day, but planning multiples. There is a reason why most jobs will give you an hour break and 2 15 minutes. I don't necessarily think that's enough. I think that it's good to take, 2 hours and then maybe 30 minutes. And maybe if you don't have the luxury of not being as productive as possible throughout most of your day, at least in those times where you might take a little bit of a pause and you have to switch gears and do something else, try to contrast doing maybe 2 hours of a thing that is particularly difficult and time consuming and energy consuming, and then 30 minutes of something that is a little easier to do. For me, I like to do it where it's like 2 hours solidly of work and then 30 minutes of, packing away the dishes. Something I can do without the same kind of intention and a little bit more mindless. And then I can maybe listen to music while I do that, or listen to a podcast, but trying to, if I don't have the day that I would like to have with as many breaks as possible, then whenever I can ease up on the kind of work that I'm doing, I try to fit in other things that also help me, relax, but also intentionally absorb really positive things. 3, be really intentional about what you are consuming. And I think that this is important for a few different reasons. One, we know that the food that we eat becomes who we are, right? So the food that you're eating absolutely becomes the cells that make up your body. So it's incredibly important to think about what we eat and to think about how that fuel is, investing in our bodies. And similarly, we have to really be considerate about how that works with the things that we consume mentally. When I was in elementary school, one of the kids who was in my class, his dad worked for NASA or some still a space station. I don't want to get it wrong. But in any case, he did this experiment when it was our grade 6 science fair. And he had this tool that actually helped measure brainwaves. And what he did was measure brainwaves doing a variety of different activities. So sleeping, reading, eating, and he also measured brain activity watching The Simpsons. And it was interesting to see that out of all the different activities that you participated in, brain activity watching The Simpsons was definitely the lowest. And I don't say this to say that you shouldn't Netflix and chill or you shouldn't enjoy your favorite shows that you're binge watching. I'm definitely watching The 100 right now and I love it. It is just also to be mindful that too much of one thing can also have a disproportionately negative effect on you. So as much as you might want to only Netflix and chill in your spare time, I would also suggest that you mix it up, maybe give yourself listen to a beautiful sound bath. Again, I offered meditation as a practice in the last video, listening to podcasts, maybe just taking some more time out in nature to listen to the birds, but being more deliberate about what you consume. I know for me, I really love horror films. And I can go and OD on watching a lot of horror films. And, I think that has a lot to do with a risk-taking part of my personality, but that's a whole other video. In any case, if I'm watching too much of those, my dreams will be entirely filled with that. And when I wake up in the morning, I really feel a little scattered. Or I can get into all these post-apocalyptic things. Like I said, I'm watching The 100. I'll be watching all these post-apocalyptic things, and then in my dreams, I'm there in a post-apocalyptic universe, fighting, and then I wake up and I'm exhausted because for the last 8 hours, I've actually been fighting the zombie apocalypse. So all of these things really impact our ability to be productive and also feel renewed in the morning. So be really conscious, especially right before you go to sleep. Be really conscious about what you're consuming in your body, and will also really impact how productive and also just how awake and present we can feel in our next day. So the next one is notice how long it actually takes you to do things. So I used to say when I would work on other contracts, oh yeah, I'm a speed reader. So, if I had to check my inbox and I had 25 emails I had to read, I would say, oh, I can do this. I can totally read this and get this done in an hour. Now, maybe I can read it easily in an hour, but when I think about actually how much time it really takes me to reply to all of these emails, I found that actually instead of getting through 25, I was maybe getting through 4 an hour because I was reading the email, thinking about what to say, crafting the email. Sometimes I might even check in with someone and see, hey, do you think this is a good email? Do you think I should add anything or change anything? So I would overestimate what I was able to do, and then I would beat myself up. And then it would make me procrastinate even more because I would feel bad that I wasn't able to actually do what I said I was going to do, which again taps into performance anxiety and perfectionism, and ultimately would just have me tapping out of really being productive at all. So instead, actually take a day or maybe a week and pay attention to how long it takes you to do things. And once you get a real sense of how long it actually takes you to accomplish certain tasks, scale your day accordingly. So like I said, I really only leave maybe 2 or 3 tasks to do in an hour because I want to make sure that I'm making space for life to happen. What if I gotta go to the bathroom? What if I gotta clean something? There's so many other things that can happen in that time, but really only making sure I'm packing in 2 or 3 things that I'm saying that I'm gonna be able to accomplish. And if I do have time to add things in, then boom, I got it. But if I don't, I still get to feel like I've accomplished everything, and then I get to check it off my list, which is also really wonderful. That's maybe a bonus thing I would add. Even if you do have a really wonderful app that you're using to help you be productive, I use iCal, I use the Productive app. I also always use a notebook. I always use a notebook and I always use sticky notes in order to help me plan out my days, to revise them. And there's a really great satisfaction that comes from being able to check things off or cross them off your to-do list. And in an increasingly virtual and digital world, I think it is valuable to find things that help you feel physically connected in the world and bring a sense of joy that helps you keep motivated to keep going. I did work for another organization, a really great one that I was really proud of. And one of the things I did as an office manager there was build systems. And that's the next thing I would say. Build systems. It is so important to consider, the work that you're doing as being valuable enough in order to develop meaningful systems in order to process things more effectively. So instead of for me just doing my budget every single month, it meant that I wanted to create a spreadsheet to do my budgeting. And then I would, duplicate that spreadsheet for the entire year. And so I made sure to track things so that whatever was left over from the month would roll into the next month. And this was a very easy way for me to keep tracking things. Or something as small. Again, as someone who's self-employed, I save my receipts. So making sure that I have a clear system of when I get in the house, I hang my keys on the same hook, and then the same little place right there has a little box where I get to put my receipts, and I put them right in there. And the thing about creating systems is that these start to become automated for you, and your body remembers them. We can thrive in schedule. So building in systems that allows your body to do things just naturally as you move through the day and help you be more productive without you having to think too hard about it also is so great for those days when maybe your productivity in general is a little lower, but you're still able to get things done. And I like to include those things in my habit tracker too. So even including things like saving my receipts for the day, because then it also gives you some really good wins. And that's also a little one I would add in, is to give yourself wins. So in my habit tracker, I have things obviously that are related to, work and projects that I'm working on. But again, I keep small things in there, like brushing my teeth, flossing, making sure I wash my face. Things that are important for me to just feel like a person on a general day-to-day, but also things that are really easy for me to check off because we do live off of validation. And again, it's not very useful for us to seek validation elsewhere because that can be fickle, and people are often just reflecting their own insecurities back towards you. So finding ways where you can validate yourself are also really helpful for keeping going and again, helping to abate procrastination. The very last one is take notes. So throughout the day, I try to just take really small notes. So I keep a little notepad with me and I take notes about little things. Again, systems I would like to improve, ideas I have, visions I have for the future. Particularly, I would want you to emphasize that every time you have just this very big idea of I wish, one day this amazing person, this celebrity, this brand, this company, this country would allow me to work with them or collaborate with them. Write those things down. Put them on sticky notes. Make sure that you put them on a page that you can always go back to. But I was saying this to a client today, if we aim very, very high and we only hit 70% of our goal, we're still gonna feel really, really great about ourselves. And so part of being able to hold on to those natural visions that come up through the day is about, taking notes and keeping those ideas going and flowing and watching that all through the day, that productivity is actually coming in ways that you maybe weren't capturing before. So if you're only focusing on your very specific kind of containers where you're accomplishing things, you're also missing out on, again, those spontaneous moments where you have really great ideas or you're processing an idea from a project. I also keep a notebook beside my bed. I used to develop databases for companies. And so whenever I was trying to figure out what a formula would be in order to build something, I would often work that out in my dreams and in my sleep, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have all these great ideas and I wrote it down. And then this was a way of me being able to reflect back, you are actually very productive at this time in the morning and this is the way that you're productive. Maybe I can build a system about it. Maybe again, I can help myself by keeping notes there or keeping a voice recorder beside my bed, just using my phone and doing that. But being able to take notes and observe yourself through the day also helps you be a lot less hard on yourself because you realize you are doing so much in so many different ways. And that is also something that you get to count when you're thinking about how productive you are. I want to just remind you all that, again, productivity is important, obviously, because we want to be able to get things accomplished and we want to be able to move forward our goals and our dreams and our visions for ourselves. However, productivity does not define you as a person. You are not valuable solely because of the things that you are produced. Your value is intrinsic. meaning that your value comes from the simple fact that you exist. All of the things that exist have an intrinsic value, and even in those moments where you cannot be productive or emotionally you might be coping with things, and again, it is really reasonable right now to be in a time where you are highly emotionally coping with the things that are happening, especially with the abundance of loss that is around us. So don't beat yourself up too much, because again, like if you go back to one of my last videos, you'll remember that bullying yourself does not work. If anything, you want to talk to yourself like the 6-year-old version of you and be as kind and encouraging and supportive, as well as maintaining good discipline and good boundaries. So thank you all so much. Like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me about what your procrastination challenges are, and I'd love to work it into the next video and continuing on this series of ways in which we can work from home and be entrepreneurs and be balanced and have a really good structure and strategy in order to achieve our goals. All right, thanks everyone. Oh, and become a member. Head on over to my website, become a member, help me produce and support these videos, and create original content that you get to have access to. All right, thanks everyone.